Kia ora guys, welcome back to the Black Jersey. A big thank you to my patrons, and let's jump right into this video. Today is my last day of isolating because of a certain medical event we have come to know for the last 2 years, and today I'm doing a video about who I would select for the All Blacks in 2022. Just to let you guys know, I will not be changing any of the regular starters in the spine jerseys of the team, so the hooker, halfback, first five, the number 8 and the fullback. The spine of the team needs to be experienced for a World Cup, so I will not be changing any of the first choice players based on the depth charts you can see in those jerseys. My selection criteria for this team is looking at getting an experienced bunch of players in preparation for a World Cup and maybe testing out some new people who can be like-for-like replacements to the most important All Blacks in the Ireland series. So that's my selection criteria. Some of you guys have seen my video about who I would pick at lock, prop, first five, and I've also done some articles on my website for the halfback and the centre, so check those out for reference if you want to have a bit more in-depth answers on some positions. We're going to start off with the hooker, and Cody Taylor, as you guys know, is the first choice, so I will be continuing through with Cody Taylor through to 2023, and now I need a like-for-like replacement of Samisoni Taukei'aho, the reserve hooker, because Samisoni Taukei'aho did really well in the absence of Dane Coles last year, so I will continue going with Taukei'aho. Asafo Almoa is the best like-for-like replacement of Taukei'aho, and I find it's best to have a like-for-like replacement for the guy you're bringing off the bench because of the impact added by Taukei'aho, so Almoa is going to come in as my third choice. I will not be selecting Dane Coles because I think his temper's a bit too fiery, whereas Cody Taylor can offer the same ball running ability and the same experience brought to the field. Now for the Loosehead Props, you guys might think this is a bit dodgy for the depth chart you can see right here, but I don't think it's dodgy at all. My strategy, as implied with the props in my video specifically detailing them, is basically cull the lot of the guys that Ian Foster selected in 2020 and basically just start fresh on this position. So for the Loosehead prop, I would start Ethan de Groot, the most improved player of 2022 in my opinion. Then as an impact player, we have big Ollie Norris, who can add a real strong impact. In my prop video that I made a few weeks ago, I was a bit 50-50 on Aiden Ross and Tamaiti Williams, so I went for Williams for the sake of his potential, but Ross has really stood up in the last few weeks, and so I'm going to go with form over potential, so scratch what I said about Williams in my last video, and I'm putting Aiden Ross into the team for a test debut. Ross and Norris are both uncapped players from the Chiefs, and I think Ross is just a real rock solid player that will be a good like-for-like replacement of de Groot. He is 26 years old, but hey, look, you just have to have a guy that's in form, and George Bower's just not in form whatsoever right now. I can't bring myself to select the guy. Over to the Tighthead prop. As you can see, Ofa Tu'ungafasi is a bit down the depth chart because of injury, but I am going to start him at the number 3 jersey because he's been in fantastic form as of late, and my replacement is going to be Angus Ta'avao, who's also racked up a few minutes on the depth chart. As you can see, these are just two experienced players that can really offset the lack of experience we're seeing on the other side of the scrum. The lack of experience on the other side is also going to be helped a bit by the hookers, I think. So yeah, we are going to need Angus Ta'avao to stick around. He's got the mobility to keep himself in there, so it's all good. I won't be selecting Tyrell Lomax or Nepo Laulala though, because both of them really have not found any form in 2022, but I will keep the door open to the return of Laulala through selecting a player similar to him, Jermaine Ainsley. Ainsley has played for the Wallabies before, but he's now eligible for the All Blacks, as I detailed in my prop video, so make sure to check that out. He's probably the fastest prop in New Zealand, and he's got very good ability in the breakdown, the ruck, and the scrum, so I would call him up for his debut. Righto guys, very controversial here, we're moving on to the locks, As you can see, Sam Whitelock is one of only 4 players who has played over 1,000 minutes of Test rugby for Ian Foster since 2020. So basically, if Sam Whitelock, Ardie Savea, Geordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane are fit at all, they're playing, and so I would continue to have Whitelock as my captain. As we found in that lock video though, I've really lost faith in Brodie Retallick and Scott Barrett, and so at the end of that video I said I would start Tupou Va'i, the form player, at number 4 in combination with Sam Whitelock. But because Va'i is a very young man, I would still have Patrick Tuipulotu coming off the bench to be an experienced player who can handle things if the youngster crumbles under the pressure, whereas I've got to have Josh Lord in there as my 4th choice lock because of just the raw potential he has. He can reach far higher heights than even Whitelock, and I'm not talking in stature, I'm talking in playing ability. Now that we're moving into the loose forwards, I would go to start Akira Ioane at the blindside flanker. He's returned from injury in absolutely fantastic form, so you can't look past Akira Ioane, who is the most minutes in the depth chart for this jersey. Luke Jacobson, I think, does have to be there as well, because you need a guy who can be the 6'8" cover, essentially, that's going to be the guy who's a real good utility you have in the wider training squad. Shannon Frizzell, on the other hand, did have a run with the law last year, and he's a bit short of match fitness because he's in injury this year, so I do think I would go to look in elsewhere, and I would go to his Highlanders teammate Marino Mikaele-Tu'u, who's an absolutely fantastic ball runner, but unlike Frizzell, he also does have an inclination to win the turnovers, which is absolutely fantastic. Though he prefers playing at 8 for the Highlanders, every single minute he's played for Hawke's Bay in the last 2 years has been at number 6. I think he would have been picked over Ethan Blackadder had he been selected last year. He was injured, unfortunately, though, so he couldn't be selected. Now, over to the number 7 jersey, I want to omit Blackadder from my squad because, look, the guy just doesn't have the potency as a jackler that I really need. Like, he's been in good form, but not great form, if you get what I mean. Dalton Papali'i also, unlike Blackadder, solves the problem the All Blacks have been having in the line-out as of late. Akira Ioane's only really effective as a jumper if he's lifted by both locks, same with Jacobson, so Papali'i starts at 7 for me because you need 4 decent jumpers, and at 6'4" you don't necessarily have to have both locks lifting Papali'i, because obviously Ardie Savea is far too short. I'm selecting Ardie Savea at 8. Sam Cane though, he's in a career best season right now, whereas in the past I've seen him as a player who probably gives away too many penalties, though he's coming across as a far more relaxed player nowadays. His injury run-in with his knee recently just makes me think, look, I don't have the confidence to pick the guy anymore. I just don't. So I want to give Tom Christie his first cap. Christie's a very similar player to Sam Cane, except he's the leading tackler in the league right now, and when he does get the ball, he can run with it, which is really good. Selecting Blackadder isn't a matter of saying Christie's a better player than him, it's just a matter of having Christie in there as a specialist, rather than Blackadder being a worse player. Blackadder's better, but specialists, they're really needed. As I said, I would pick Ardie Savea at 8, no question, and some people are going to get very angry at me for saying I would not pick Peter Soakula. As you can see, Hoskins Sotutu has had the 2nd most minutes at number 8, whereas Luke Jacobson's also had a fair share of the depth chart. Sotutu has got to be there off the bench because for the spine to get cover in crucial matches, you just need a replacement off the bench for every jersey off the spine. Peter Soakula turns 28 years old this year and is uncapped, whereas obviously he's got no minutes in this depth chart right here. Sotutu is a very similar player to Soakula, except Sotutu's been improving as the season's gone on, and he's a big game player as he showed against the Brumbies. Soakula's just kind of plateaued, and there's only really one thing he can do to me, which is tackle and carry, whereas Sotutu offers the value of a kicking game, believe it or not, and he also has more of an inclination to win turnovers. He doesn't do them all the time, but when he does win the turnovers, they're at absolutely crucial moments, so Sotutu has to go, and unfortunately for Peter Soakula, I think he's going to have to debut for Fiji. Now we're getting into the halfbacks. I wrote an article on my website detailing who I would select to halfback, so go check that out. As you can see, I've kind of backed Aaron Smith to remain on. He still takes up the majority of the depth chart, and I think he would take up a far larger share had he not been staying at home for the birth of his child in 2021. TJ Perenara's amount of minutes was kind of inflated by that, and they're not all they're made out to be. I would drop TJ Perenara right now. I'm just not a big fan of the attitude he brings to the game, if you know what I mean. As I showed in my previous video, he can do things that can really offset the game plan that I don't really agree with, whereas I don't think his passing is quite quick enough. Because of that, I would bring in Folau Fakatava as a really, really lively halfback who is finally eligible to bring off the bench. Just so I don't lose as much minutes from the depth chart, I would have to go with Brad Weber as my third choice, because you're getting rid of quite a few minutes with Perenara there, and this depth chart does have to stay healthy. So sorry to Finlay Christie, who is currently the best halfback in the competition, but you've got to go with Brad Weber for the sake of his experience, because if Folau Fakatava is eligible, you've gone through all that effort to keep him around, stop him playing for Tonga, well then you've got to pick him, guys. It's just a no-brainer. Now we're getting into the first fives. Don't freak out, watch till the end. I'm starting Richie Mo'unga, as I was leading on to in my previous videos. I think he's the best 10 in the world. But right now we need a specialist 10 in the squad now. I'm going to call up Bryn Gatland because you really need an experienced 10 who can just come on, do the basics and kick the goals if Mo'unga does happen to get injured. Stephen Petafeta, on the other hand, is a very good like-for-like replacement of Beauden Barrett, so Stephen Petafeta would be a really good guy to bring off the bench in the big major tests. Damien McKenzie's currently unavailable for selection right now, so Stephen Petafeta, I think, is the guy putting his hands up, wanting to fill that role, so I'm going with Richie Mo'unga. I then want to have two uncapped players in Bryn Gatland and Stephen Petafeta, whereas I'm going to select Beauden Barrett as a fullback, because as I outlined in my previous video, I do think that is his best position indeed. Over to the midfielders. Because I've only selected 3 first fives, rather than 2, as Ian Foster does, I'm going to have to cull my 5th midfielder and go down to 4. Braden Ennor did not impress me in 2021 whatsoever. His performance against Italy was one to forget, and because he's had far too many injuries, I just think his body's a bit too brittle for international rugby, whereas he's not a certain starter for the Crusaders anymore. At 25, he should be at the height of his career, and not a player you should be picking on potential. So I'm going to continue going with David Havili at 12, and because Anton Lienert-Brown is out injured, Rieko Ioane is my number 13, my centre. Quinn Tupaia, I think, is really coming along nicely, developing well as a player, so I think Quinn Tupaia will be the next cab off the rank if Havili's injured. Whereas, as I've talked about previously in this video, you need like-for-like replacements for your most important players. As Rieko Ioane's played over 1,000 minutes for Ian Foster, you desperately need a backup centre who can cover wing as well, and Bailyn Sullivan is the most he is the closest replica, if you get what I mean, to Rieko Ioane in New Zealand rugby right now. Bailyn Sullivan's playing absolutely outstandingly for the Hurricanes, and as I outlined on my website in the article about the centres, I think it's just a move you've got to at least attempt to try before the World Cup. Alex Nankivell's a very similar player, but not quite as close as Sullivan is to Ioane, whereas obviously Braden Ennor, I'm just not impressed with his form. I don't think it's worth recalling Jack Goodhue either, because he's not a 12, his best position's 13, and he hasn't really taken up any minutes on the depth chart at 13, so I just wouldn't go selecting Jack Goodhue right now. Righto guys, the last section, the outside backs. Leicester Fainga Anduku starts in the 11 jersey and George Bridge is dropped if I'm selecting this team. He has really just been putting his hands up, and we need a bit more power on the wing rather than in the centre, because when it's in the centres, it's read like a book. So yes, Fainganuku for 11, no debate over that. Caleb Clark, I was really disappointed to see he's keen to play NRL. But you know what? we need a bit more power on that wing. So once he returns from injury, I do think I will give Caleb Clarke a bit of game time. He's got a hamstring injury right now, but he's not going to be out for too long, so I do think Caleb Clarke is worth selecting as a backup to Fainga Anuku though. Then at the number 14 jersey, I will go with Will Jordan. You can't fix what isn't broken. He was outstanding there last year, and he just needs the space that he gets on that wing. And he's yet to play a single minute at 15 rather, so I do want to continue with Jordie Barrett at 15 because he's the best fullback in the world. Yes, he's big, that's cool, but as I've said before, crash ball runners from 12 are read like a book. Jordie Barrett is so good under the high ball, and he's such an intelligent player who does his research on the game, and I can really just commend Jordie for all the improvements he's been making over the last few years, because a few years ago I would never have picked him. I called him a choker, said he wasn't good enough, and I'm eating my words so hard right now because he's the best fullback in the world, and his brother Beauden is very similar to him when he's at 15, so Beauden Barrett is my backup for Jordie, and Bodie would be wearing jersey 23 with Peter Feta in jersey 22 because you need those replacements for your spine on that bench. If his centre's injured, all good, Fainga Anuku goes there, and I guess Will Jordan and Jordie Barrett are going to have to be the wingers if a centre gets injured. Well, you have to replace your spine, guys. They're crucial to you winning World Cups, so that's the main development I guess I've made for this video. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Next week I'm going to do a video on who I think Ian Foster, the coach himself, will be selecting for the All Blacks, so stay tuned for that. And once again, a big thank you to my patrons. I'm going to get off and edit this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. It's much appreciated.